August 16th, 1977, 4 a.m. Elvis Presley stands in his Graceland bathroom looking at himself in the mirror. In just 10 hours, he'll be found dead on that same bathroom floor. But right now, in these final hours, Elvis is still talking, still hoping, still planning for a future he'll never see. The last words Elvis spoke before he died weren't dramatic, they weren't poetic, they were heartbreakingly ordinary. And that's what makes them so devastating. Because when you hear what Elvis said in his final hours to his girlfriend, to his doctor, to the people closest to him, you realize something terrible. Elvis had no idea he was dying. He thought he had time. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why Elvis's last words weren't goodbye. They were "see you later." And that changes everything. To understand Elvis's final words, you need to understand where he was in August 1977. The king of rock and roll was 42 years old, overweight, exhausted, struggling with prescription drug dependency that had been building for over a decade. But he was still performing, still working, still being Elvis. His girlfriend, Ginger Alden, had been with him for about 9 months. She was 20 years old, young enough to be his daughter, but Elvis was planning to marry her. He'd given her an engagement ring just 4 months earlier. On August 15th, Elvis was preparing for another tour. He had a dental appointment scheduled. He was supposed to fly out the next day for a series of concerts starting in Portland, Maine. Everything seemed normal. Well, normal for Elvis, which meant late nights, prescription medications to help him sleep, and a routine that would have exhausted most people half his age. But here's what most people don't know. In those final 24 hours, Elvis talked about the future constantly. He made plans. He talked about the tour. He discussed music. He even talked about having more children with Ginger. Every conversation Elvis had on August 15th and into the early hours of August 16th was filled with tomorrow, not goodbye. Tomorrow, and that's what makes his last words so haunting. Because Elvis wasn't preparing to die, he was preparing to live. August 15th, Elvis wakes up around 4 p.m. This was typical for him. His sleep schedule had been completely reversed for years. He spends time with Ginger, his daughter Lisa Marie, and some members of his entourage. They're all gathered at Graceland. Around 7 p.m., Elvis sits down at the piano in the music room. And this is where it gets emotional. Elvis starts playing gospel songs, "How Great Thou Art," "Where No One Stands Alone," songs about faith, about heaven, about peace. His cousin Billy Smith was there that night. Years later, he said Elvis seemed reflective, calm even, like he was at peace with something. But Elvis wasn't saying goodbye. He was just playing music, the way he always did. Around 10:30 p.m., Elvis has a dentist appointment. Yes, at 10:30 at night. Because when you're Elvis Presley, dentists make house calls whenever you need them. Dr. Lester Hoffman comes to Graceland and works on Elvis's teeth for about 2 hours. During this appointment, Elvis talks about the upcoming tour. He's concerned about his appearance. He wants to look good for the concerts. According to Dr. Hoffman, Elvis seemed tired but optimistic. He was looking forward to getting back on stage. After the dentist leaves, Elvis is supposed to try to sleep. He needs to be at the airport by 6 p.m. the next evening for the flight to Portland. But Elvis can't sleep. This is the part where everything starts to fall apart. Elvis calls down to his personal physician, Dr. George Nashopoulos, Dr. Nick. He needs something to help him sleep. Dr. Nick prescribes a packet of medications, sedatives mostly. This was routine. Elvis had been taking sleep medication for years. But here's the thing. Elvis still isn't worried. He's not scared. He's just frustrated that he can't sleep. Around midnight, Elvis goes upstairs with Ginger. They're in his bedroom. He's reading. She's watching TV. And then Elvis says something to Ginger that will haunt her for the rest of her life. It's around 2 a.m. on August 16th. Elvis still can't sleep. He's been reading in bed a book about the Shroud of Turin. Elvis was deeply spiritual and loved reading about religious mysteries. Ginger is dozing off next to him. Elvis turns to her and says, "I'm going to the bathroom to read." That's it. I'm going to the bathroom to read. Not "I love you," not "good night." Just a simple statement about where he was going. Ginger, half asleep, mumbles, "Okay, but don't fall asleep." Elvis had a habit of falling asleep on the toilet while reading. It had happened before. It was almost a joke between them. Elvis says, "I won't," and he walks into the bathroom. Those were the last words Ginger Alden heard Elvis Presley speak. "I won't." 2 words. Casual, routine, the kind of thing you'd say 1,000 times without thinking about it. Ginger falls back asleep. When she wakes up around 2 p.m. that afternoon, 14 hours later, Elvis still hasn't come out of the bathroom. She finds him face down on the floor. His face is purple. His body is cold. Elvis Presley is dead. And the last thing she ever heard him say was a promise he couldn't keep. "I won't fall asleep." But here's what makes this even more heartbreaking. Those weren't actually Elvis's final words, because Elvis kept talking after he went into that bathroom. Around 4 a.m., Elvis calls downstairs. He calls his cousin Billy Smith and asks him to bring some more reading material, something about spirituality. Billy brings the books up. He hands them to Elvis through the bathroom door. Billy later said Elvis seemed alert, coherent, maybe a little drugged, but functional. They talked briefly. Elvis thanked him, and Billy went back downstairs. So what were Elvis's actual last words? We don't know exactly, because no one was in the bathroom with him when he died. But we do know what Elvis was thinking about in those final hours. And we know the last conversations he had. And when you piece them all together, they tell a devastating story. Between midnight and 4 a.m. on August 16th, Elvis made several phone calls. This is documented. We know who he called and roughly what was discussed. One of the calls was to his manager, Colonel Tom Parker. Elvis wanted to discuss some details about the upcoming tour. Schedule changes, set lists, business matters. According to people who knew about the call, Elvis sounded tired but determined. He was committed to the tour. He wanted to make sure everything was perfect. Another call was to his backup singer, Kathy Westmoreland. They talked about music, about gospel arrangements. Elvis wanted to add more gospel songs to the show. Kathy later said Elvis told her, "I'm really looking forward to getting back on stage. I feel good about this tour. I feel good about this tour." Let that sink in. Hours before his death, Elvis Presley was making plans, expressing optimism, looking forward to the future. There's also reportedly a call to Joe Esposito, his road manager and close friend. They discussed logistics, travel arrangements. Joe apparently asked Elvis if he was feeling okay, if he was ready for the tour. Elvis said something to the effect of, "I'll be fine once we get going. I just need to get some rest. I just need to get some rest." Every conversation, every phone call, every interaction Elvis had in those final hours was forward-looking. Not one person who spoke to Elvis in his last night alive thought he was in immediate danger. Yes, people were worried about him, his weight, his health, his dependence on prescription drugs. But nobody thought Elvis was dying, least of all Elvis himself. And that's the tragedy. Because if Elvis had known, if he'd had any sense that these were his final hours, he would have said different things. He would have told people he loved them. He would have said goodbye to his daughter, Lisa Marie, who was visiting that weekend. He would have held Ginger a little longer, but he didn't know. So he said ordinary things, made ordinary plans, had ordinary conversations, and then he died alone on a bathroom floor, clutching a book about faith and spirituality. Here's something most people don't know. When Elvis died, his body was in the middle of digesting his last meal. The autopsy showed partially digested food in his stomach. This tells us something important about his final hours. Elvis ate something between midnight and 2 a.m., probably ice cream or cookies. He had a habit of late-night snacking. This means Elvis wasn't preparing to die, he was eating, planning to sleep, planning to wake up and fly to Portland. The toxicology report showed multiple drugs in his system: codeine, morphine, Valium, Quaaludes, and several others. But here's the key detail. None of these drugs were at lethal levels individually. What killed Elvis was the combination: polypharmacy. When you mix that many central nervous system depressants, your breathing slows down, your heart rate drops. Eventually, everything just stops. Medical examiners believe Elvis likely fell unconscious sometime between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. He probably didn't feel pain. He probably didn't even know what was happening. His body slowly shut down while he sat on the toilet, reading about religious mysteries, thinking about the tour, thinking about tomorrow. And this raises a heartbreaking question. In those final moments of consciousness, what was Elvis thinking? Was he planning his stage outfits? Was he thinking about song arrangements? Was he thinking about Ginger sleeping in the next room? We'll never know. But based on everything Elvis said and did in his final 24 hours, we can make an educated guess. He was thinking about the future. Because Elvis never stopped believing in tomorrow. Even when he was taking doses of medication that would have terrified any responsible doctor. Even when his body was failing. Even when everyone around him could see he was in trouble. Elvis believed he would wake up, get on that plane, perform those concerts, continue being the king. And that belief, that unshakable optimism, is both beautiful and devastating. Because it meant Elvis never got to say the things you're supposed to say at the end. He never got to tell the people he loved how much they meant to him. He never got to make peace with his demons. He never got to say goodbye. August 16th, 1977, 2 p.m. Ginger Alden wakes up. She notices Elvis still isn't in bed. At first, she's not worried. This had happened before. Elvis falling asleep in the bathroom with a book. She walks to the bathroom door, knocks, no answer. She opens the door, and her life changes forever. Elvis is face down on the floor. His pajama bottoms are around his ankles. There's a book on the floor next to him, The Scientific Search for the Face of Jesus. Ginger screams. She runs out of the room, calling for help. Within minutes, Graceland explodes into chaos. Elvis's bodyguards rush upstairs. They try to revive him. They call 911. Paramedics arrive. They work on Elvis for several minutes, but it's clear he's been dead for hours. His body is cold. Rigor mortis has already set in. They transport him to Baptist Memorial Hospital anyway, hoping against hope that maybe they can bring him back. They can't. At 3:30 p.m., Elvis Presley is pronounced dead. The king of rock and roll is gone. And here's what makes it even more tragic. Downstairs, members of Elvis's staff were preparing for the tour. Suitcases were being packed. Travel arrangements were being confirmed. The plane was being fueled. Everyone was getting ready for Elvis to come downstairs, get in the car, and head to the airport. Nobody suspected that upstairs, Elvis had been dead for almost 10 hours. The last time most of his staff saw Elvis alive was the previous evening. He'd said goodnight, told them he'd see them in the afternoon. See you in the afternoon. Another promise Elvis didn't get to keep. Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's 9-year-old daughter, was at Graceland that day. The last time she saw her father alive was the night before. He'd kissed her goodnight, told her he loved her, told her to be good for her mother. Routine. Normal. The kind of thing a parent says every night. Lisa Marie didn't know those would be her father's last words to her. Nobody knew, and that's the cruelest part of sudden death. It doesn't give you time to prepare, time to say the important things. It just happens, and you're left with ordinary words, ordinary moments, ordinary goodbyes. So what can we learn from Elvis's last words? First, that life is fragile. Elvis Presley was one of the most famous, most powerful, most wealthy men in the world. And he died alone on a bathroom floor, hours away from the people who could have saved him. Fame didn't protect him. Money didn't protect him. Success didn't protect him. In the end, Elvis was just a man. Vulnerable, mortal, human. Second, that addiction is deadly. Elvis didn't think he had a drug problem. He took prescription medication. Everything was legal. Everything was prescribed by doctors. But legal doesn't mean safe. The combination of drugs in Elvis's system wasn't unusual for him. He'd taken similar doses dozens of times before. But this time, his body couldn't handle it. This time, the drugs won. And Elvis never got a chance to fight back. He never got a chance to get help. He never got a chance to recover. Because addiction doesn't wait for the right moment. It doesn't give you time to prepare. It just takes you. Third, and most importantly, we learned that we should never assume we have more time. Elvis thought he'd wake up, get on that plane, do those concerts, live another day. He didn't know August 15th would be his last full day alive. So he didn't say the important things. He didn't tell Ginger how much he loved her. He didn't have a final heart-to-heart with his daughter. He didn't thank the people who'd stood by him through everything. He just said, "I'm going to the bathroom to read." And that was it. How many of us are living the same way? How many of us are assuming we have tomorrow? How many of us are putting off the important conversations, the meaningful moments, the heartfelt goodbyes? Elvis's last words are a reminder. Don't wait. Don't assume you'll have time later. Don't take the people you love for granted, because you never know when see you later becomes goodbye. Elvis Presley spent his last hours on Earth making plans for a future he'd never see. Don't make the same mistake. Tell the people you love that you love them. Say the things that matter. Live like every goodbye could be your last. Because for Elvis, it was. But there's one more piece to this story. One final mystery that's haunted Elvis fans for decades. What was Elvis reading when he died? We know he had a book with him, The Scientific Search for the Face of Jesus by Frank O. Adams. It's a book about the Shroud of Turin, about faith, about proof of Christ's existence. Elvis was deeply religious. He'd been raised in the Assembly of God church. He sang gospel music his entire life. In his final hours, Elvis was seeking answers to the biggest questions of all. What happens after we die? Is there a heaven? Will we see our loved ones again? And here's the haunting part. Elvis found those answers sooner than he expected. Within hours of reading about eternal life, Elvis entered it. Was it coincidence? Was it fate? Or was it God's way of preparing Elvis for what was coming? We'll never know. But there's something poetic about it. Something almost beautiful. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, spent his last conscious moments reading about Jesus Christ, the King of Kings. He died seeking faith, seeking peace, seeking answers. And maybe, just maybe, he found them. Ginger Alden said years later that she believes Elvis is in heaven, that he's finally at peace, that all the pain, all the struggles, all the demons that haunted him in life are gone. She said Elvis once told her, "When I die, I want to be remembered for the music, for making people happy, not for how I died." And that's the real tragedy of Elvis's last words. They weren't about music. They weren't about his legacy. They weren't about the impact he'd had on the world. They were just ordinary. I'm going to the bathroom to read. But maybe that's okay. Maybe Elvis didn't need to give a grand final speech. Maybe his life was the speech, and his music was the goodbye. Elvis Presley died 47 years ago, but his last words still echo. Not because they were profound, not because they were poetic, but because they remind us of something we all know but often forget. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. Elvis thought he had time. He thought he'd wake up. He thought he'd get on that plane and continue being Elvis. But time ran out, and all he left behind were ordinary words, ordinary moments, ordinary goodbyes. So here's my challenge to you. Don't let your last words be ordinary. Don't let your final goodbye be rushed or thoughtless or taken for granted. Tell the people you love that you love them. Make peace with your past. Live every day like it could be your last. Because for Elvis Presley, August 15th, 1977 was just another day, until it wasn't. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you to cherish the people in your life, subscribe to King of Rock and Roll and hit that notification bell. We've got more untold stories about Elvis, his life, and his legacy coming your way. And let us know in the comments, what would your last words be? Stay tuned for more content. Long live the King.